You're not really saying that music can kill, are you?
Yes, I am.
Music can be a very powerful thing. Nothing galvanizes the emotions as quickly.
Hello, kiddies. We are going to have a really good time together. I think this might be our first three-timer, I
Whoa.
believe. Right?
Wow. Yeah, we should send him something.
Yeah, flowers or edible arrangement.
No, that's
Yes,
horrible. He'll
anyone,
never talk
three
to us
sho-
again.
3 shows, you get an edible arrangement.
No, not from us. He'll
5
never talk to
shows,
us.
you get to send somebody else your edible arrangement
No,
from the third time you're on.
let's send him a rope.
Okay. John McCutcheon, who I don't even know how to describe all the stuff he's done and does on just a regular basis.
I know.
He has released an insane number of records.
Hmm.
And this new one is a really cool, so we get into in the interview. 1925, there was a big fiddle / bluegrass convention. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Something. All these players came together and played, and he, to mark the 100th anniversary, did a sort of updated reimagining of the show and
Mhm.
and the musicians on there, and kind of put together a really cool record that sort of goes along with some of the songs, does some other things, and sort of is a response in many ways to the original one, and it's an updating of where fiddle playing and bluegrass in general stands today. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But every time we have John on, it's a lot of fun.
It's always fun. It's fascinating. I just don't even say anything. I just listen to him because he's so great.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of things where I'm either like Googling as we're talking, like look this up and make a note to
Mhm.
read about this more later.
Mhm.
And this conversation was no different.
Yeah.
Um, are you seeing a show while you're in the UK? Oh, that's right. You're seeing our friends, the New Model Army.
Yes, I am.
Well, that'll be lovely.
I know it's going to be great.
When is that?
October 12th.
So it's not too early in the proceedings of your trip while you're missing my birthday.
I know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll come back with presents that I can send you in a year.
Please, a year. Fran and I are just staring out the window looking for presents.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Nothing. But that'll
Someday.
I will be taking the elder to go see Red Cross and the Melvins.
Maybe if you didn't get to see all the bands I want to see, you get more presents.
Right. I'm trying to figure out what shirt. I believe I wore my cream shirt when I saw them before, so I can't wear that again.
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
that would be creepy.
Mm-hmm. To wear your Cheap Trick shirt. That's what I wore last time I saw them.
Interesting. I was thinking Sparks as a way
Well,
to
that
just
was my
sort of
next thing. Was I was
say
going
to
to say wear
Stephen, hey,
Sparks.
we get each other.
Right.
When do we get to sing My Way? Right,
Right.
Stephen?
Right.
Yeah, Red Cross, my Red Cross shirt seems too on the nose too.
Yeah, no,
You
I would
don't
never wear
wear
that.
Yeah, you don't wear this t-shirt of the band to the band you're seeing.
No, would you like me to send you my Going Coconut shirt?
I would, but let's be honest, it won't get here till
I know,
the
next
next
tour.
midterms.
I
Yeah.
know. The next tour.
Yes, exactly. Congratulations on this record. Let's talk a little bit about it. So this is I don't want to call it a tribute record. It is marking the 100th anniversary of this famous Fiddlers Convention, which the fact that there aren't more Fiddlers Conventions, just for name alone, is disappointing.
Well, there are not as many as there used to be, say, 50 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
when I would go to a lot of them. But there's some really seminal ones that happen now, but they're not in the mainstream, and most music is not in the mainstream.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you for not using the word tribute because
I was very specific for that. Yes.
yeah, and I mean, as you probably know, this is the fourth in a series of centenary albums that I've done. And the one thing I wanted to do with each of them, especially considering that the first three were Woody Guthrie, Pete Seeger, and Joe Hill, I wanted to show that the music that they wrote, the subjects they were tackling, were not museum pieces, but in fact were very much alive and relevant today. And when I went to all these musicians and said, here's the deal, I do not want a historical recreation. I want you to own this music and make it yours because, as the title says, it's 100 years or a century after this event, which had its issues, and the music in general has had its issues historically, and so we're looking to say, hey, this is what's happened in the last 100 years. Things are really different.
We should note when you say that it has its issues at the time. In 1925, this gathering was sponsored by the Klan. Is that correct?
In part,
In
in
part.
part, the Buster Brown Shoe Company was there too, and and I had someone who has a zero tolerance for anything clannish, which I mean I agree with, but this was 100 years ago. I'm not a fan of presentism, which judges everything by today's standards.
Hmm.
But yeah, and it was not unusual. I mean, I don't know if you all have read both essays that were in the booklet. I hope you have.
Haven't, unfortunately.
Because the second essay that was in there was by an historian of old time music named Phil Jameson. And I asked him to write something about the history of fiddle contests. And as he pointed out, a lot of places in the South, the Daughters of the Confederacy were sponsors of this to raise money to build the statues that we're taking down now. So it's a celebration of evolution and change and yet continuation at the same time, because we're playing this music that we learned because these people unexpectedly were famous 100 years.
Hmm.
Right. That's so true. That's so interesting, actually. I think a lot of people don't think about that. You have to, sometimes these things happen that aren't necessarily, like you said, today so great, but we wouldn't necessarily have these great things without these awful things that helped get us where we are.
Well, and I didn't discover the clan connection until I was in the middle of doing all this, because some of the primary source material that I was using was the notes to an album released 50 years ago. The notes were done by a folklorist named Joe Wilson. And in fact, that album was just recently re-released on the Rebel label. And he made no mention of he mentioned Buster Brown, but he made no mention of the Klan, even though, according to my sources in Mountain City, he knew about it. And I felt like, no, this is, if I were a younger John McCutcheon, running into that would have said, oh, no, I can't touch that. But I'm older now, and I have a different perspective on what comes out of things. Our nation came out of slavery, and we're still dealing with issues of that. But you can't be, if that's going to be your roadblock to having a meditation and in fact an important conversation about, everybody who plays this music knows that the past had racist and sexist things. I mean, everybody. But yet we still play it, and we make it our own. I mean, we're not, when we hear old language in old rock and roll songs, we go, oh, that's pretty weird. Um, and you
Hmm.
just either change it, you don't do those songs, but or you say, oh, well, I didn't even hear that back then.
Mhm.
And
Right.
it's interesting that you chose not to just throw the baby out with the bathwater and just say we're not doing anything at all. Because you note on the website, it says the fact that it was an integrated lineup. Is that correct?
Oh, the original one was not.
Yes. Oh, it was
and,
not.
and,
Okay.
and would not have been. I mean, there were no female fiddlers, even though there were plenty of female fiddlers back then.
Hmm.
Some who could have won a prize. There were no black fiddlers there, even though some of the fiddlers that were there learned from black fiddlers. And so when I looked at who I had invited to be a part of this, I thought, oh, well, here's where we are now. I don't have to artificially add black
Mm.
musicians because they're already here. I don't have to artificially add women because, oh, just by chance, there's almost equal number of men and women on this project because that's what the community looks like right now.
Did you have kind of a long dark night when you realized it was the original convention was sponsored by the Klan, or was it just like I'm sticking my finger in these people's eyes posthumously
Well,
and
yeah, I mean, it was a shock and it was like, oh God, I don't need this. It was more that.
hmm.
And like I said, a younger John McCutcheon would have gone, oh, no, no, many long dark nights. Um, but the darkest night, as you know, the Carter Stanley used to sing, is just before the dawn.
It's
And
very
Hmm.
true.
I contacted all the musicians and I said, I just want you to know this. And if any of you want to pull out, you're welcome to do that. But I think this is a great opportunity to have, to bring this conversation out in the open. Because there was
Hmm.
stuff that happened well before this. Stuart Duncan, for instance, um, if you Googled Lee Highway Blues on YouTube, the first thing that would come up would be Stuart Duncan as a young guy playing this and absolutely owning it. And every fiddle player, myself included, looks at this and goes, "Oh, okay, I can't play that anymore." Or I'm certainly not going to put that on YouTube or record it because that is the definitive version of that. And it was played by G.B. Grayson, who was a participant in the 25. So I said to Stuart, hey, I mean, you own this tune. How about if you do that? And he said, it just feels weird today to do a song named after a Confederate general. So I don't think so. So long before it was this whole, or Bruce Molsky, who is the best guy singing and playing with the fiddle. He does really interesting harmonies and arrangements, and he's the boss. And he originally was going to do "Oh Me Wise," and he called me up and said, I just don't think we need to have another song about a guy gratuitously killing his girlfriend for no apparent reason. Um, Murder ballads just feel weird these days. And so
Mm.
this was the kind of evolution that happens with people who 100 years later have lived through the civil rights movement and Black Power and uh, women's rights and anti-war movements, and uh, they just say, okay, yeah, that was a good song when I was 20, but I think about it differently now. Or I don't want to play a tune named after, if this is going to be my one tune, I
Mm.
don't want it to be named after a Confederate general. So that kind of, kind of internal editing was going on even before I brought the Klan thing up. And not a single person said, um, no, I don't think I can be involved in that. In fact, Sparky Rucker said, let me do uh, Don't Let Your Deal Go Down. Because that was recorded by Fiddlin' John Carson, who was a Klan member. And so,
Mm.
so it feels like I've always thought it felt like a blues anyway. So there was, there was reaction to that saying, oh, well, this focuses the project. It's a much more interesting, promo handle than, oh,
Mhm.
this happened 100 years ago.
But it's such an interesting recontextualization of everything. To, like you said, this was 100 years ago. Now here's how this generation of musicians is interpreting these songs, or like you said, putting the emphasis on certain songs and not others, to just sort of the continual line of music going down the generations and going down the centuries now of, yeah,
Mhm.
we're
I mean,
hopefully a smidge better than we were 100 years
oh,
ago.
no, well, we're better than we were. We're a lot better than we were. Um, I mean, it's a it's a long it's a long road from Bill Haley to the Clash, and that was almost 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Think about
Yeah.
when the Clash was that was the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's 40 years ago.
Right.
And so that kind of stuff happens so quickly. I remember getting up at the Musicians Union convention, this was 20 years ago, saying, who can tell me what the most popular music in America is right now? And it was a big crowd of mostly white old men. And I said, it's rap and hip hop. And if I was a rap and hip hop musician and I walked into this convention, I would think I'm in the wrong place. So
Mhm.
stuff changes, and it changes really quickly. I mean, this particular event was the result of the beginning of the country music industry.
Hmm.
And in 1923, Fiddlin' John Carson, out of the blue and completely unexpectedly, sold 1,000,078s. And the nascent country music industry went, what? There's a market for this, and there's people who play this, and they were just as inventive then as they are now. They said, let's do a whole lot more just like that. And that's what the music business does today. And so
Right.
in 1925, this was the first package show of country music. I mean, your listeners who watched Walk the Line, the Johnny
Mhm.
Cash film,
Hmm.
Mhm.
which I thought was terrific.
Oh,
Uh,
I love that.
and I
Yeah.
knew Johnny, and I knew I was going to say Reese.
Yeah.
I knew
June.
June better than I knew Johnny, and she Reese nailed it. It was
Mhm.
remarkable. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. Your listeners will remember that Johnny Cash would be in a package show with
Right.
Roy Orbison and Jerry Lee Lewis and the Carter family. Well, this was the very first one because Fiddlin' John Carson, Uncle Am Stewart, the Fiddlin' Powers family, and the Hillbillies were the four big fiddle bands that people knew by their recordings and because they were on the radio. So they put them together for this event. Everything changed 2 years later, 1927, the Bristol Sessions, the Carter family, Jimmy Rogers discovered the same weekend, and boom, suddenly it was all vocal music from that point on. And not only because of the variety of it, but because, and this sounds familiar too, doesn't it? The record companies realized, oh, these are original songs. We could control the rights of these. And so everybody went to vocal music, and there was actually relatively scarce fiddle music recorded after that.
Hmm.
So this was a really seminal event. So from
Yeah.
a simply folklorical cultural event, I thought it was important to to remember, but also on a more personal basis. I've been playing in Mountain City for about the last 10 years. And when I first drove into town, I noticed that there were murals of traditional musicians on the side of the hardware store, on the side of the grocery store, on the florist. And there was actually a mural of the painting that's on the front, or the photograph that's on the front of the collection.
Hmm.
And this is a little rural Appalachian town that decided, okay, this is where we're going to put this. These are the eggs we're going to put in our basket. That this is our history. They have a junior Appalachian musicians program that's teaching young kids to play this music. So they have some kind of ties to their community. They have an arts center that's not only teaching people different kinds of arts, but that's a sales point for over 130 local artists. So at a time when a lot of small rural communities are just sort of being overburdened with opioid epidemic and the outmigration of kids who feel like, well, I don't feel any roots here. This is just weird and old, and I want to go to the big city. This is a place that's investing in itself. So the whole project is a fundraiser for those projects in that community that I've come to know and love, and that's, you know, so it's not just an historical thing. It's not just getting all my friends together and playing cool versions of stuff that was rooted in the music back then and showing what's happening now. But it's also, you know, that was the other reason I wanted to do this and why I wasn't willing to give up when we came to this big stone in the middle of the road.
So as to hear you describe the initial uh, convention of musicians, you said the big four. That seems like was that a daunting task to sort of recast it now? Or was it pretty easy? Like with this person, we got to get them.
Oh, well, I'm lucky that the this community is small and we all know one another,
Hmm.
and I'd like to think we all like one another. It's really very fraternal.
Mm.
Uh, we like playing together. We admire what other people have done, um, and everybody knew about the 1925 convention. I mean, this was, and it was a really easy ask. And in my mind, Stuart Duncan is the best fiddle player on two legs. He's been on all my albums, and he was the first person I asked. Tim O'Brien always has really interesting takes.
Mm.
He makes old songs sound new,
Hmm.
and he makes new songs sound old. Becky Bowler is a huge rising star in the bluegrass music world. She was the vocalist and fiddle player of the year for the International Bluegrass Music Association. Molly Tuttle is everywhere
Yeah,
these days.
absolutely.
Um, and her really revolutionary sort of claw hammer guitar uh, technique, and she did such an amazing job in that old G.B. Grayson song. I've always been a rambler, which has always been one of my favorite. And Old Crow Medicine Show, I mean, God, they're just so much fun. And Ketch Secor, the head, the front man for Old Crow, used to live near Mountain City, and
Mm.
claimed that he dated a girl from Mountain City, and so it was all about right from the very beginning. Oh yeah, yeah, let's do this. And he's a G.B. Grayson scholar, so he wanted to do G.B. Grayson stuff. And Molly is his girlfriend, so said, hey, you should do a G.B. Grayson thing too, and I'll play a little fiddle behind you. No, it was fun to get all these people together and to see them take so many different roads. I mean, this stylistically, there's all kinds of stuff on this. At first, I thought it would just be a whole bunch of fiddle tunes, and there's plenty
Hmm.
of that. But there's Trey Wellington and Victor Furtado doing this wild twin banjo version of an old fiddle tune, an old time banjo and a bluegrass banjo. What? They're not supposed to play together. A black guy and a white guy, and the black guy is the
How?
bluegrass banjo player.
Right.
And Sparky's take on "Don't Let Your Deal Go Down" and the kind of ragtime stuff that Kathy and Marcy's Old Time Coalition did, and it was just And it was a lot, it was very, the process was very organic. We would gather at Old Crow's studio and just, there was no overdubs. We'd sit in a circle and it was like, I think Tim ought to play the mandolin on this one and John should play the banjo. That kind of stuff went on, and it was easy, it was fun. It's why I kept the laughter at the end of the first cut, when, I thought you were going to quit before that. It was really emblematic of the nature of these recordings.
So it clearly surpassed what you were expecting
Oh,
when you
gosh.
left.
It turned out it's a bit of a Frankenstein to go to all these different people and say, pick a tune.
Hmm.
Here are the list of participants in the original event. Here's a list of tunes associated with them. Some we know they played back in the convention 100 years ago. Some we don't know. You can do a deep dive into YouTube on any of these people. Just pick something, and it all happened pretty. We got a pretty broad representation of people. I was really pleased, and then the approaches that people take, especially when I said, no, this is not historical stuff. I want you to own this, and then you have to put it all together. And yeah, some happened in the studio, and I was able to surf with that and say, oh, let's do this a little different. And some stuff people did in their own studios. I mean, Earl White and his crew went off to West Virginia. Jake Blunt recorded his thing in his living room in Rhode Island. It was, it was, I was really pleased with the way it turned out, and the fact that reviewers have been very kind in saying, this is really cool. And for those of you who don't know much about this music, here's a great way to understand how broad this is. It's not what you think.
Was there some point in the process where it sort of felt like, where you've made a lot of records, you know how this process goes.
Mhm.
Was there some point along the way where you're like, this is going to be something special? Obviously, your list of musicians is, can't be touched.
Yeah.
But as you're hearing tracks, as you're playing, is there some point where you're like, I think we really might be onto something here?
When the stuff, especially when we're in the Old Crow studio, they gave us their studio. And as some of the stuff started to develop, I thought, oh, this is really diverse, much more diverse than I thought it was going to be. And the playing is really organic and fun. And like Tim O'Brien took completely different approaches to his two tunes than I thought he was going to.
Hmm.
And just did each of them as they had never been done before. And that's when I thought, oh, I love my friends. They're doing such a good job. And the light on the hill was always, I can't wait for the people in Mountain City to hear this. And they were blown away. They were the ones who, to me, were the real bellwether of it. Turned out way better than they thought it would. And they couldn't believe that all these people said, yes, we'll do this. So, yeah, it was probably when the mixes were being done. Because then, but prior to all that, you can do so much, but it was, oh, well, we can, feature this here and do this here, and the sequence could be really cool if we sequenced it this particular way. So, yeah, I've made a lot of albums, and almost all of them, I'm bringing in my own material, and I have an idea of how it might come out, but my MO has always been to surround myself with people who are a lot better musicians than I am, and invite them to put their fingerprint on it, rather than me handing out a chart and saying, here, play these notes, because the people I work with they're way more creative than I am. So it's fun to have this notion of what can happen and then see it come to fruition.
Long Journey Home, a century after the 1925 Mountain City Fiddlers Convention, is available right now wherever you get your music. For more information, you can find John online where he is at folkmusic.com.